Il Combattimento di Tancredi e Clorinda, or the Battle of Tancredi and Clorinda, is a musical setting by Claudio Monteverdi of a duel that takes place at night outside the gates of Jerusalem during the First Crusade, which took place around the end of the 11th century. Monteverdi wrote a long introduction in the book where this piece was first published, explaining how the first performance was organized. We learned that it was written for a very specific occasion, an evening of carnival entertainment. Our challenge today is to try create something for a modern audience which allows them to some degree to step into the shoes of the lucky guests at that evening in 1624. We have historical costumes. We have some very special lighting effects created by our lighting designer. And of course, most of all, we have the swords, which don't just sit glinting prettily in the light by the sides of the actors, but clash steel on steel in a real battle.
What's really special about staging this piece is that it's primarily a narrative rather than a dramatic piece. That means things are described rather than happening. There's very little dialogue, so this makes the character of the narrator very important. And in order to engage the audience at a theatrical level, he himself, the narrator, has to be engaged in the story. It has to mean something to him. Starting from that, we thought, what if the character of the narrator was in fact Tasso, the poet, the author of Gerusalemme Liberata, which was the basis for Monteverdi's libretto. Quite like the idea that by telling the story of Tancredi and Clorinda, he is exorcising his own demons. He's conjuring up a story of his own past when he was a reckless youth and destroyed something that was very precious to him, and he never recovered.
The Venetian nobility who heard this for the first time would have been intimately familiar with Tasso's poem. They would have known every line of it. They would have known what's happened immediately before the duel that Monteverdi has set. So we've got readings which we use not just to create the carnival atmosphere where readings and storytelling and poetry were part of the expectation, but also to get some of the backstory across so that the audience are filled in on what Tancredi and Clorinda have done before and who they are.
The first thing one feels when playing these instruments is the sheer physicality required to get the sounds out of them. Because these aren't generic Baroque instruments. The manner of their construction, the types of strings being used, balance of strings across, the models for the instruments, and the fittings of the instruments. These are the culminations of over 20 years' work to give us what are now the best approximation we have to the string instruments that Monteverdi would have been familiar with. And it's through discovering the techniques to perform on these instruments that we learn so much about the music.
The reason I've decided to use mainly LED lighting on this production is to create a really stark contrast between the first half of the programme and then the second half that includes the Combattimento. And Monteverdi's idea behind this was apparently that the evening of ordinary entertainment would be interrupted suddenly by people bursting in and the whole mood of the evening changing. And so I was thinking, how can we do this for a modern audience? Because we're not very easily shocked anymore. And one of the things that I've been coming across a lot in my line of work is the opposition to LED lighting. People don't like it. People find it very harsh, very unflattering, very invasive sometimes, and it just doesn't have the warmth and the kind of natural feel that tungsten has. So I thought, well, can I use that to create this kind of jolt out of the ordinary, out of the comfort zone that we're used to as an audience? that was something that was really important to me on this, is making people look at this style of concert in a different way.
With all these effects and with the background that we give to the audience, we hope that they can share something of the emotional highs and lows of the original guests, the adrenaline of the battle, the element of surprise and shock, the brutality of some of the fighting. And we hope that today's listeners and spectators will feel something of what moved the original audience to tears in 1624.